Black power.
Black power.
I'm going boom, boom. Black power, Comrade Daniel.
Black power.
What's up, y'all? Black power, Karina. What's going on? Black power. When y'all come in, please make sure you share. Hashtag shared. When you share it, Black power, Christopher.
Black power, Christopher. Share.
Share this thing. Share this political
like
education. That melanin is so poppin'. Black power, Queen Soft.
Black power, Queen.
Black power, Erica.
Black power, y'all. Black power, Erica.
Make sure you say Black Power Gigi.
Black power, Gigi.
Make sure you put hashtag shared in the comments once you've shared the video, y'all. Let's spread this. If you got any groups you in, you know, share it on your timeline. Share it whatever possible. Even send the links to your family members and your friends so they can tune in too.
Share it to your multiple pages. If you like me and you stay locked up on the Facebook pin,
you know,
share it to all of them.
I feel like a little punk because I've never been in Facebook jail before. I've never been in Facebook jail before. But I guess I should. Well, I don't know. Black Power Cameron. Black Power Kimya.
Hey, Kimya.
Yes, y'all come on up in here. Come on up in here. Thank you for sharing, Cameron. All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and get it started. Welcome to the Revolutionary Book Trap. You know, because we like weird.
We ratchets.
You know, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, welcome, y'all, with Chief Dia.
And Chief Nyah, Black Power.
Black Power, y'all. So, yeah, it's time for another one. And if you didn't know, today we begin
Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton.
Yes. Thank you for sharing, Comrade Gigi. So, we just finished Asada, an autobiography written by Comrade Asada, which was off the chain.
Amazing.
So now we're on to our next book. And we started with chapters 1 through 3, you know, like how we do all of our books. And just real quickly, if you want the PDF, if you want the free PDF to follow along with us, please hit up our comrades Robert and Gigi. I believe Gigi is in the comments. And also, I go ahead and say, if you need the PDF, go ahead and put a black fist in the comments right now, and we'll make sure that we get it over to you. You can also hit us up on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Let us know you want the PDF so we can give it to you, so you can follow along and participate. So today we're going to be doing chapters 1 through 3. So yeah, and I'm gonna turn it over to before I turn it over, Normani. Listen,
That was dope.
Have y'all seen Normani's new video for motivation? Like,
that was dope.
I feel like if you've seen Coven, American Horror Story Coven, and you know how Fiona was the Supreme and her daughter was taking all of her power away from her because she was becoming the Supreme. I'm sorry, Beyonce, but the new Supreme is rising, girl. She's rising. But the video was dope. So motherfucking black. And then, you know, I really ain't feeling the Beyonce, Jay-Z whole thing right now, especially with Jay-Z, you know, doing this cool ass shit with the NFL and all that other kind of stuff like that. So it's good that we got a new Supreme rising up in the moment. But anyway, let me stop. Conrad, now you can go ahead with the announcements.
So, as for the announcements, Black Hammer is going to be making an appearance all weekend at the Atlanta Black Pride celebration. It's going to be the weekend of August the 30th. That's Friday. On the 30th, we're going to be at the block party that's going to be taking place at the Marquette. That's at 868 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard, Atlanta. We're going to be doing outreach. And then we're also going to be having our workshop that's going to be taking place at the Georgia Tech Hotel and Conference Center. That is at 800 Spring Street, Northwest, Atlanta, Georgia, 30308. So if you're in the area, come out to that so you can get some political education and get to know who we are. Saturday, the 31st, we will be speaking at the LGBT Greek meet and greet.
Cameron being fresh in these comments.
What's Cameron talking about? Hold on. We're going to be at the Georgia Tech Hotel and Conference Center, same address. We're going to be speaking there and turning these Greeks into revolutionaries.
Okay.
And then Sunday, the 1st of September, we're going to be at Candler Park and we're going to be Dia is going to be performing. So make sure you turn out for that. And we will also be speaking. So come out to the Black Pride celebration, because we're going to be turning it all the way up and we're going to turn all these niggas into revolutionaries.
Black Power, right on. And hey, I was about to say something else, but I lost my train of thought. But also another announcement that we have, if you guys have been following our social media, last Friday, we announced the Kucheza Moto Dancing in the Flames of Revolution fundraiser that we have started. And Kucheza Moto means dancing flame in Swahili. And Kucheza Moto will be a dance class that I'll be leading here in Atlanta, and it's just going to be just black on top of black.
Yep.
Kucheza Moto will be a dance class for black teenagers, children, adults, for us to come together, dance our hearts out, perform our hearts out, and not conform to, anything that has been, put, imposed upon us as being like the standard of dance, mainly, ballet. Yeah. I'm talking about hip hop, twerk, African, contemporary, all of the dance styles that are reflective of African people. That's what I'll be teaching. And so yeah, you can support us. We're trying to secure the venue that's here in Atlanta, and the venue that we want to use is called Soul Asylum Dance Studios. So yeah, we're raising money to rent the venue, so you can go to you can go to GoFundMe.com/Kucheza and that is spelled KUCHEZAMOTO, and it's pinned right here in the comments, right here in the comment section. So please, let's fuel the passions of dance and talent within the black community, because working class African parents and colonized parents can't be pay for no goddamn expensive ass ballet classes. And I'm proud to say that I'm not classically trained, self-taught as so many of us are,
Absolutely.
Girl, ain't nobody worrying about somebody walking on their toes and all this other kind of shit like that. And it's no shade to our brothers and sisters who are classically trained. But again, we can't deny the fact that, most of us, can't afford to send our children to no damn ballet class because it's too fucking expensive. Mm-hmm. So we have to create, not only dance in the genres that we know, but to create our own genres of dance that are reflective of black people. Right. So, yeah, you can support by going to GoFundMe.com/Kucheza. And also, just real quick, the book club serves as a fundraiser for Black Hammer and also a member drive for Black Hammer as well. So please support Black Hammer, this organization that is bringing you the book club, is bringing you Kucheza, is bringing you the #ProtectOurGirls campaign, so many different initiatives that, Black Hammer is doing, and we need your support.
Definitely.
So please go to GoFundMe.com/BlackHammerOrg, or you can go to the website blackhammer.org. You can donate through CashApp at BHBookclub. So many different ways that you can support. And again, all of those links are pinned right here in this comment. So Black Power. All right, y'all. So we're going to get started. And first, I feel like it's very important that we start off with the manifesto. And when I first heard the term revolutionary suicide, I didn't know what it meant, essentially. And coming into political life, the first understanding that I had of it was like class suicide, committing class suicide, meaning that, you know, to become a revolutionary, you would have to let go of all of your aspirations of being, you know, the petty bourgeoisie, you know, wanted to have this lifestyle, like, you know, doctors, lawyers, government officials, and all of these different things. Like, in order to be a revolutionary, to be a servant for the people, you have to commit class suicide. And, you know, revolutionary suicide, I just, that wasn't a term I was familiar with, but this manifesto that was laid out by Comrade Huey P. Newton, very, very deep, very,
it's heavy.
Very heavy. So I think that would be the perfect place for us to start off with. So we're going to read that for y'all, and then we'll get into the review of chapters of Black Power. Let's start off, Comrade.
So revolutionary suicide, and this is the very beginning, a manifesto, the way of liberation. For 22 months in the California men's colony at San Luis Obispo, after my first trial for the death of Patrolman John Frey, I was almost continually in solitary confinement.
Black Power, Gazi.
There in a 4x6 cell, except for books and papers related to my case, I was allowed no reading material. Despite the rigid enforcement of this rule, inmates sometimes slipped magazines under my door when the guards were not looking. One that reached me was the May 1970 issue of Ebony magazine. It contained an article written by Lacey Banco, summarizing the work of Herbert Hendon, who had done a comparative study on suicide among Black people in the major American cities. Dr. Hendon found that the suicide rate among Black men between ages 19 and 35 had doubled in the past 10 to 15 years, surpassing the rate for whites in the same age range. The article had and still has a profound effect on me. I have thought long and hard about its implications. The Ebony article brought to mind Durkheim's classic study, Suicide, a book I had read earlier while studying sociology at Oakland City College. To Durkheim, all types of suicide are related to social conditions. He maintains that the primary cause of suicide is not individual temperament, but forces in the social environment. In other words, suicide is caused primarily by external factors, not internal ones. As I thought about the conditions of Black people and about Dr. Hendon's study, I began to develop Durkheim's analysis and apply it to the Black experience in the United States. This eventually led to the concept of revolutionary suicide. To understand revolutionary suicide, it is first necessary to have an idea of reactionary suicide, for the two are very different. Dr. Hendon was describing reactionary suicide, the reaction of a man who takes his own life in response to social conditions that overwhelm him and condemn him to helplessness. The young Black men in this study have been deprived of human dignity, crushed by oppressive forces, and denied their right to live as proud and free human beings. A section in, I'm going to butcher this name, but they butcher ours, so.
Period.
The Koski's Crime and Punishment provides a good analogy. One of the characters, Marmeladov, a very poor man, argues that poverty is not a vice. In poverty, he says, a man can attain the innate nobility of soul that is not possible in beggary. For while society may drive the poor man out with a stick, the beggar will be swept out with a broom. Why? Because the beggar is totally demeaned. His dignity is lost. Finally, bereft of self-respect, immobilized by fear and despair, he sinks into murder. This is reactionary suicide. Connected to reactionary suicide, although even more painful and degrading, is a spiritual death that has been the experience of millions of Black people in the United States. This death is found everywhere today in the Black community. Its victims have ceased to fight the forms of oppression that drink their blood. The common attitude has been, what's the use? If a man rises up against power as great as the United States, he will not survive. Believing this, many Blacks have been driven to death for the spirit rather than of the flesh, lapsing into lives of quiet desperation. Yet all the while, in the heart of every Black, there is the hope that life will somehow change in the future. I do not think that life will change for the better without an assault on the establishment. And I want to read here later what he's referring to as the establishment, which goes on exploiting the wretched of the earth. This belief lies at the heart of the concept of revolutionary suicide. Thus, it is better to oppose the forces that would drive me to self-murder than to endure them. Although I risk the likelihood of death, there is at least the possibility, if not the probability, of changing intolerable conditions. This possibility is important because much in human existence is based upon hope without any real understanding of the odds. Indeed, we are all, black and white alike, ill in the same way, mortally ill. But before we die, how shall we live? I say with hope and dignity, if premature death is the result, that death has a meaning reactionary suicide can never have. It is the price of self-respect. Revolutionary suicide does not mean that I and my comrades have a death wish. It means just the opposite. We have such a strong desire to live with hope and human dignity that existence without them is impossible. When reactionary forces crush us, we must move against these forces, even at the risk of death. We will have to be driven out with a stick. Che Guevara said that to a revolutionary death is the reality and victory the dream. Because the revolutionary lives so dangerously, his survival is a miracle. Bakunin, who spoke for the most militant wing of the First International, made a similar statement in his revolutionary catechism. To him, the first lesson a revolutionary must learn is that he is a doomed man. Unless he understands this, he does not grasp the essential meaning of his life. When Fidel Castro and his small band were in Mexico preparing for the Cuban Revolution, many of the comrades had little understanding of Bakunin's rule. A few hours before they set sail, Fidel went from man to man asking who should be notified in case of death. Only then did the deadly seriousness of the revolution hit home. Their struggle was no longer romantic. The scene had been exciting and animated, but when the simple, overwhelming question of death arose, everyone fell silent. Many so-called revolutionaries in this country, black and white, are not prepared to accept this reality. The Black Panthers are not suicidal. Neither do we romanticize the consequences of revolution in our lifetime. Other so-called revolutionaries cling to an illusion that they might have their revolution and die of old age. That cannot be. I do not expect to live through our revolution, and most serious comrades probably share my realism. Therefore, the expression revolution in our lifetime means something different to me than it does to people who use it. I think the revolution will grow in my lifetime, but I do not expect to enjoy its fruits. That would be a contradiction. The reality will be grimmer. I have no doubt that the revolution will triumph. The people of the world will prevail, seize power, seize the means of production, wipe out racism, capitalism, reactionary intercommunalism, reactionary suicide. The people will win a new world. Yet when I think individuals in the revolution, I cannot predict their survival. Revolutionaries must accept this fact, especially the black revolutionaries in America, whose lives are in constant danger from the evils of a colonial society. Considering how we must live, it's not hard to accept the concept of revolutionary suicide. In this, we are different from white radicals. They are not faced with genocide. The greater, more immediate problem is the survival of the entire world. If the world does not change, all its people will be threatened by greed, exploitation, and violence of the power structure in the American empire. This handwriting is on the wall. The handwriting is on the wall. The United States is jeopardizing its own existence and the existence of all humanity. If America knew the disasters that lay ahead, they would transform this society tomorrow for their own preservation.
For their own preservation. Their own preservation.
The Black Panther Party is in the vanguard of the revolution that seeks to relieve this country of its crushing burden and guilt. We are determined to establish true equality in the means of creative work. Some see our struggle as a symbol of the trend towards suicide among blacks. Scholars and academics in particular have been quick to make this accusation. They fail to perceive differences. Jumping off a bridge is not the same as moving to wipe out the overwhelming force of an oppressive army. When scholars call our actions suicidal, they should be logically consistent and describe all historical revolutionary movements in the same way. Thus, the American colonists, the French of the late 18th century, the Russians of 1917, the Jews of Warsaw, the Cubans, the NLF, the North Vietnamese, and any people who struggled against the brutal and powerful force are also suicidal. Also, if the Black Panthers symbolize the suicidal trend among blacks, then the whole third world is suicidal, because the third world fully intends to resist and overcome the ruling class of the United States. If scholars wish to carry their analysis further, they must come to terms with that 4/5, 80% of the world, which is bent on wiping out the power of the empire. In those terms, the third world would be transformed from suicidal to homicidal, although homicide is the unlawful taking of life, and the third world is involved only in defense. Is the coin then turned? Is the government of the United States suicidal? I think so. With the redefinition of the term revolutionary suicide is not as simplistic as it might seem initially. In coining the phrase, a neoteric phrase in which the word revolutionary transforms the word suicide into an idea that has different dimensions and meanings applicable to a new and complex system. My prison experience is a good example of revolutionary suicide in action, for prison is a microcosm of the outside world. From the beginning of my sentence, I defied authorities by refusing to cooperate. As a result, I was confined to lockup in a solitary cell. As the months passed and I remained steadfast, they came to regard my behavior as suicidal. I was told that I would crack and break under the strain. I did not break, nor did I retreat from my position. I grew strong, and if I had submitted to their exploitation and done their will, it would have killed my spirit and condemned me to a living death. To cooperate in prison meant reactionary suicide to me. While solitary confinement can be physically and mentally destructive, my actions were taken with an understanding of the risk I had to suffer through a certain condition. By doing so, my resistance told them that I rejected all they stood for. Even though my struggle might have harmed my health, even killed me, I looked upon it as a way of raising consciousness of the other inmates, as a combination to the ongoing revolution. Only resistance can destroy the pressures that cause reactionary suicide. The concept of reactionary suicide is not defeatist or fatalistic. On the contrary, it conveys an awareness of reality in combination with the possibility of hope. Reality, because the revolutionary must always be prepared to face death, and hope, because it symbolizes a resolute determination to bring about change. Above all, it demands that the revolutionary see his death and his life as one piece. Chairman Miles says that the death comes to all of us, but it varies in its significance. To die for the reactionary is lighter than a feather. To die for the revolution is heavier than Mount Tai. And just so you know, when he mentioned the establishment, a lot of people, when we say things like the system, colonialism, or the establishment, or whatever it is that we're fighting against, he defines that the power structure based on the economic infrastructure propped up and reinforced by the media and all the secondary educational and cultural institutions. That's the establishment.
Black Power. Real quick before we get into a discussion, I see in the comments that some people are asking for the PDF. So if Comrade Gigi, if you can, if you could speak with these comrades, Chishi is asking for it, I believe, and I think Histofer put the link in the comments. So if you need the PDF, you can click on that link, or Comrade Gigi can send it over to you. Black Power. But thank you, Comrade Nyah, for reading the manifesto. And as I read it, to prepare for the book club this afternoon, it was just like really, it was just like, it was really, really deep. It was extremely, extremely deep. And, you know, just as Comrade Huey says in the book, you know, when you come into revolutionary life, it could be this, you know, these romantic ideas of, you know, African people and colonized people being totally free of colonialism, of imperialism, and, you know, just every contradiction that we're faced as colonized and oppressed people. And, you know, it's hard not to feel that sense of optimism when you're out in the streets, organizing amongst the people, you know, putting on different events, you know, doing different actions, feeding the homeless, and all of these things, you know, which really feed that optimism and gives you this hope, just knowing that, you know, freedom is right around the corner. And this manifesto was very, sobering. It did bring the realism to just the fact that, you know, as revolutionaries, as, you know, members of a revolutionary organization, that death is not something that's too far off. And it just made me think about, you know, Martin Luther King Jr., who wasn't the most radical person, even though in his final days he was moving, you know, to a more radical position, and was, as a result, was murdered by the state because of that. But when you think of his legacy of, you know, his peaceful demonstrations of being able to organize Black people all around the world, you know, in this, you know, nonviolent way, you would think, what kind of problem is that causing for, you know, the United States, for the U.S. government? We not hurting nobody, we not trying to kill nobody, and nothing like that. It wasn't the actions, but it was what Martin Luther King Jr. was inspiring in Black people and colonized people to rise up, to organize against this beast that, you know, was stepping on our necks. And somebody, you would think, for Martin Luther King Jr. to be so peaceful, why would the state kill him in such a way? And there it is. And, you know, like Huey said, revolutionary suicide, our wish, you know, could be so separate from actual suicide. It's because we want to live, and we want to live as humans. We want to live as, you know, as a dignified people. And if we can't live with that, if we can't have that, then we don't want nothing else. We don't want nothing else.
Yeah, this is, well, one thing when you were talking that I thought about was the fact that we, you know, when we're talking about the things that we want to do, even as an organization where we want to feed the homeless, I think, and, well, no, I don't think, I know, there's some sort of penalty that was recently enforced for feeding, like, the homeless in Atlanta. I think it's like you get a $75 fine or something to that effect. And so there is a reason why things are the way that they are, you know, why there is a class system, why there needs to be poor people in order for a capitalistic system to thrive. And so it's not, you know, when people say, or the establishment is like, well, we want to make things better for everybody. We want to eliminate hunger and homelessness and poverty, and no, the fuck you don't. You don't. And if you did, you could. You have more than the means to do that. And the people that came before us that did fight to do this, the Black Panther Party, where it fed poor Black kids in their neighborhoods to make sure they had something to eat, you wouldn't have, you know, set out to destroy an organization such as that preached self-defense, that preached that it wanted to be self-determinate, it wanted to be a self-governing people. And, you know, the deaths of Martin Luther King, the deaths of Huey Newton, the deaths of Malcolm X, the deaths of all of our revolutionary, Patrice Lumumba, we could go on and on and on, Marcus Garvey, all of the, I mean, one could even argue, like, why did, you know, when Dr. Amos Wilson even touched on this, talking about, like, suicide and spiritual death and just kind of a non-desire to thrive as a Black human being. and he died of mysterious circumstances. And and it's just like it's not a desire for us to be a self-governing people or just to have a will to live. It's just you thrive in capitalism. So I mean, this manifesto was heavy to me, very heavy, and just when he outlined the differences between reactionary suicide, which is just basically you die at the whether it just be internally or just because you're living in a world colonialism has killed you, and you have no insight as to that. You might have just died. You got you succumb to alcoholism or whatever drug overdose, and not even realizing what this did to you, or just like you have no desire to identify with being black or being African, and just you out here running around in red, white, and blue shorts on 4th of July and celebrating shit like that. Just things like that's more like a mental suicide. Whereas this is exactly the opposite. Revolutionary suicide is being aware of the plight that has the war that has been inflicted on your people, and doing what it takes to kill that establishment at all costs, because you are a small you're a small being in this very, very big picture. So that, I mean, it was really deep.
Yeah. Black power. So we have a comment from Comrade Histofer who says, hashtag read that back. Revolutionary suicide is a strong desire to live with hope and human dignity, that existence without them is impossible. When reactionary forces crush us, we move against these forces even at the risk of death.
Black power.
Black power. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get into these chapters. We're reviewing chapters 1 through 3. And again, if you need the PDF, if you need the free PDF, please comment here in the comment section. Comrade Gigi she's working on the double to make sure you get it. And I believe that Comrade Histofer posted the link for the PDF within the comment links as well. So you can always click on that and download it as well. Support Black Hammer, support the book club. Go to GoFundMe.com/blackhammer.org or donate through CashApp BHBookclub. And let's, support this organization, support the movement. Black power.
Share this in all the groups that you're in, please, because we got to get this political education out there.
Yes.
Black power.
Black power. Okay, so starting off with chapter 1, we get an introduction to Comrade Huey's home life, where he just speaks about, what's revealed first. One of the things that was revealed that I didn't know was that his father's father was a white man who raped his grandmother. And that was, of course we know that's not something that's unique, but I didn't know. I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that. He also, he speaks about the dynamic of the family. His mother didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. And, the father, was the provider. And, we see that in our homes, that the man is the one that's supposed to, bring home the bacon and stuff like that. And, he speaks to his father working 2 to 3 jobs, to support the family. And, his father was also a minister. It was a very religious household. And, when I was reading, how he was, when speaking to, his father just being the provider and, his mom being a stay-at-home mom, just the whole question of gender roles, arised in my, in my thinking. I was thinking when I was reading it, and just, the understanding that, his father was working like 2 to 3 jobs, just understanding the type of stress that could bring on one person, understanding if it could have possibly been different, if the mother was able to also work and provide for the household as well too. And I think a lot of us, when being raised by single parents, whether it be your father or your mother, we can see the type of stress that working, so much can bring to an individual. And dang, I lost my train of thought. Ugh.
I hate when that happens.
Dang, I lost my train of thought. But okay, here it is. Just understanding that, a lot of African families and colonized families, we can't afford to have one parent work and the other one don't work, because that could be detrimental to our survival. So, a lot of us grew up in households where both parents were at work, and if you were the older sibling, you had to make sure that you was home to take care of your your younger siblings and things like that. And just that whole dynamic is based on the fact that we see white families, where the father can go to work and make this type of salary where the mom doesn't have to, worried about going to work, versus African families and colonized families. Shit, if both of us not working, we're not gonna make it.
Yeah.
So those were just some of my thoughts that came to my head when reading that. And
one of the things too, that when he said his father worked 3 jobs at once, but then still made time to come in and spend time with them. They had conversations. Huey learned a lot from his father. Had lots of conversations, and it seemed, his father was very influential. And I know sometimes when we have a parent that works like that, 3 jobs at any given time, that I remember reading somewhere in here where he said that, he might come home, right after leaving one shift, but 30 minutes before he went to another shift, and then he'd be home and he'd spend time with the kids. And so that to me was very admirable, just because it's, it's difficult to not be tired working, especially the physically demanding jobs that typically, to make any type of a worth of living, you had to do, especially we're talking about, this is in the 40s, 50s. So, but the father was still, both the parents were very influential, but the father, even working like he did, it's not like he was an absent parent.
And what was also, nice to read about, was his mother's, influence, and just him speaking about how influential, how optimistic she was, and just basically, he does comment that his parents got married at a very young age, so it was like his mom was growing up herself as she was raising her children, and he was just saying how she always was just so optimistic. And I think we see that in so many African mothers that are raising their children, and just continuously reminding us that everything is going to be okay, even in the midst of sitting in the house with no electricity, surrounded by candles, and she just holding you and singing to you, talking to you, and just so many situations, Black and colonized people have been able to get through off of the strength of an African mother. And, it's just to see the resilience of African women in any situation that they're placed in, it's just inspiring for all of us. And, I can remember at times when just growing up, and my mom would, literally light the fire on the grill, like, how you cook on the cookout grill. She could cook a whole meal off a grill, like pots and everything, rice.
Resourceful.
Like, and Comrade Huey talks about, how his family would have the struggle meal where it was like a day old cornbread mixed in with like gravy and onions and stuff like that, just to, that they would eat in order to survive. And, I think that's a sameness that African and colonized people can identify with, everywhere, we're located. So moving on to our hashtag, read that back parts. My hashtag, read that back part, is where Comrade Huey speaks about his family being very poor, but not knowing that, not understanding that. And I think we got different pages. On which page? Because I have the PDF. Because mine is on 16.
Oh, yeah, we must, because I think 16 we're already in the... Well, maybe not. Hold on.
Let's see. I think it might be on page...
Where you're talking about where...
Oh, yeah. It starts on page 14. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. It says, "We were very poor, but I had no idea what that meant. There were happy times for me. Even though we were discriminated against and segregated into a poor community with substandard living conditions, I never felt deprived when I was small. I had a close, strong family and many playmates, including my brother Melvin, who was 4 years older than me. Nothing else was needed. We just lived and played, enjoying everything to the fullest, particularly the glorious California weather, which is kind to the poor. Unlike many others I knew, we never went hungry, although our food was the food of the poor. Kush was standard fare. Kush is made out of day-old cornbread mixed with other leftovers such as gravy and onions, spiced very heavily and fried in a skillet. Sometimes we ate Kush twice a day because that's all we had. It was one of my favorite dishes and I looked forward to it. Now I see that Kush was not very nutritious and downright bad for you if you ate it often. It's just bread, cornbread. Life grew even sweeter when I was big enough, 6 or 7 years old, to play outdoors with Melvin. Our games were filled with joy and exuberance of innocent children, but even they reflected our economic circumstances. We rarely had store-bought toys. We improvised with the materials at hand. Now listen to this. Rats were close at hand, and we hated rats because they infested our homes. One had almost bitten off my nephew's toe. Partly because of the hate and partly because of the game of it, we caught rats and put them in a large can and poured coal oil into the can, then lighted. The whole can would go up in flames while we watched the rats scoot around inside trying to escape the fire, their tails sticking straight up like smoking gray toothpicks. Usually they died from the smoke before the flames consumed them. We also despised cats, because we were told that cats kill little babies by sucking the breath out of them.
I've heard that before.
We tested the tale about cats always landing on their feet. When we caught cats and took them to the top of the stairs and hurled them down, they would land on their feet most of the time. Dirt was a favorite toy. We used to play at being builders. The roof of the house was our building site. We would climb up there and pull up the dirt-filled buckets behind us with rope, hand over hand to the top of the house, then dump the dirt down on the other side. There were no swimming pools near us, but when we got a little older, we began to wander down to the bay with the other kids and go swimming off the pier in the dirty water. Dirt, rats, cats. These are the games and toys of the poor, as old and cruel as economic reality. Now, that was my hashtag read that back part because, I mean, as Comrade Huey says right here in this last sentence, dirt, rats, cats. These are the games and toys of the poor, as old and cruel as economic reality. And, you know, for all of us, and I think it is tied to the optimism that we see coming from African and colonized parents, that shields us from the understanding that as we're growing up, we don't think we're poor. We don't understand that we're poor. And, you know, just in case you don't know, if you have to live paycheck to paycheck, you're poor. You are poor. And, you know, just how, you know, African people and colonized people are able to turn, you know, any situation around it's just amazing, you know, the continuous struggles that we find ourselves under. But to understand that dirt killing, you know, rats and cats, this is what African children, colonized children, grow up playing with, and we don't see nothing. We see it as just, you know, regular play date.
Yeah.
And versus going into white neighborhoods where you see kids playing with bikes, they got Barbie dolls, they got
frisbees, trampolines,
all of these different gadgets that they have. But, you know, African and colonized children are reduced to playing with dirt. And I can remember splashing around, stomping in the mud, and having the motherfucking time of my life. And was just having, you know, this beautiful experience. But we don't understand exactly in them terms what exactly is going on, what is happening, and how, again, these things are reflective of our economic, you know, situation as colonized people. But
well, I just had a funny memory, like, and I mean, I didn't used to play with fireworks, but my wife did, and she belonged to a little clique of kids that used to torture and just terrorize the police, where they would like put firecrackers in like their cars and everything like that. And I wish I could see that. So I mean, black kids, black people in general have always had to be resilient, and you know, we make the best of our circumstances no matter what. And it usually we've always had culture. I mean, but just everything that, you know, we've had to endure, and we make the best of it. So we can literally make something out of literally.
Yeah, what's your hashtag?
I had highlighted where he was talking about the exodus of when, you know, black people were leaving like the South in hopes of you know, making a better life for themselves. You had, you know, even like on my biological dad's side, in the 60s, I think they moved from Tennessee to Ohio, and they moved up there, you know, Detroit area, where they had the what did they have up there? Was it General Motors? Something that was like the jobs that were bringing people up there to work. And even to this day now, you know, Chrysler and Jeep, they employ a lot of us and people in general and everything. So, but it's on page 12, or in this it's on page 12, where it says the great exodus of poor people out of the South during World War II sprang from the hope for a better life in the big cities from the North and the West. In search of freedom, they left behind centuries of Southern cruelty and repression. The futility of that search is now history. The black communities of Bedford, Stuyvesant, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Newark, Brownsville, Watts, Detroit, and many others stand in a testament that racism is as oppressive in the North as in the South, and Oakland is no different, because that's where Huey ended up moving. And it says even the Chamber of Commerce boasts about Oakland's busy seaport, its museum, professional baseball, football teams, and all the beautiful sports coliseum. The politicians speak of an efficient city government and the well-administered poverty program. The poor know better, and they will tell you a different story. Oakland has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, and as for the black population, it's even higher. And I highlighted that just because anywhere that you can go, people are like, "Oh yeah, you want to move there? Crime is low. This is that." They mean for white people. They don't mean for you. They don't mean, you know, and. You know, anywhere that you go, you can guarantee that the black population of that city or wherever you're looking to move is going to have a higher, it's going to be a higher rate of poverty. It's going to be a higher rate of unemployment. It's going to be a higher rate of just being colonized, whatever you want. The health is not as good. Life expectancy is shorter. And so it's really nowhere that you can live, you know, where you won't suffer the consequences or the outcomes of colonialism. And even if you're living in a petty bourgeoisie manner, you'll get your reality, because it's all attached to something you doing to sell out. I don't know, but yeah, that was my hashtag. Read that back.
All right, so we have some hashtag read that backs in the comments, beginning with Comrade Histofer, who says, read that back, dirt, rats, cats. These are the games and toys of the poor, as old and cruel as economic reality, page 33. Living these extra sensitive days, the kids would seek therapy for animal cruelty and get ringworm from playing in dirt. Black Power. Yeah, right? Because I mean, like, when you look at the dynamic of it, when you look at, like, in the media, in most places, you see that, you know, white kids grow up torturing animals and things like that, and it's contributed to them, you know, growing up being murderers and, you know, all of these different types of things versus black children, colonized children, you know, who basically, you know, do these things to these animals because what else is it for a child to do in a poverty-stricken neighborhood or growing up poor? Like, what else is it for us to do to resort to these things, you know? You know, and it is not intentional to say that, you know, African and colonized children go out to find these poor, helpless animals and do these things to them. But what other devices are we left with?
Well, he even mentioned, like, the fact that they were being tortured by rats. So
Right.
they hated rats. It
Exactly.
wasn't like they caused their living conditions to be horrible.
Right.
One almost bit off
His nephew's toe.
So, yeah, I would hate rats, too, if I had to live among the among them, and they, you know, made my living condition or the...
A living hell. Them bitches got to die. And we have Comrade Daniel who says, my family used to catch rainwater in buckets. That away me and my siblings could bathe. We have Comrade Histofer again who says, I didn't know I was poor until I went to school. My mom and grandparents always made sure we had what we needed and some of what we wanted. And we have Victoire, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, who says, wow, that is powerful. I used to play with dirt as well. And so many of us can identify. With that. So, yeah. Moving on to chapter 2. And please, if you're just coming into the book club, please share this video. Put hashtag shared in the comments when you shared it. Please visit blackhammer.org to support Black Hammer. Donate what you can. Go to gofundme.com/blackhammer.org, or you can donate through CashApp at BHBookclub, so we can keep the book club going, so we can bring you more, you know, avenues of political education and provide, you know, the things that we need to politically educate our people so we can organize ourselves, you know, and fight off colonialism, fight off white imperialism, so we can live with dignity and as human beings. Black power. So moving on to chapter 2, and he titles this chapter "Losing," and in this chapter, Comrade Huey, you know, speaks about, you know, his school experience. Namely, he talks about elementary school, and you know him. If you didn't know, Huey was the youngest of 7 children. So they had a big family, and you know he talks about how they were often moving all around Oakland, and you know because they moved a lot, you know he was in almost every elementary or junior high school in the city, and so yeah, and he just makes the comment, you know, that he, as many of us, you know, don't really internalize fully or understand the seriousness, you know, of the colonial education system, and you know how it affects us, you know, as colonized people.
Right.
African or, you know, indigenous, and you know, he just speaks about growing up feeling ashamed of being black, you know, and just the different lessons that we're taught as black and colonized people, which reinforce this feeling, you know, of hopelessness and just not wanting to anything to do with being black. And I think one of the stories that he speaks about, you know, that was actually read in school, that was taught in school, is about little black Sambo, who Comrade Huey refers to as a coward, you know. And I'm not really too familiar with the story, but as Comrade Huey, have you heard that story before?
I've heard the story before. I've not read it, but I think he actually kind of goes in and tells the story of it.
About this little Sambo is confronted with this tiger, and he doesn't even fight the tiger. He just gives away all of these gifts that he's supposed to be carrying, and all he wants at the end of the day is to eat pancakes. And Comrade Huey compares that to the stories of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and this concept of Prince Charming who saves the princess, and how he wanted to be associated with that, versus, you know, little Sambo, who was strategically, you know, painted to be, you know, this coward. And just the reality that is imposed upon us as black and colonized people, that this is who we are. We're little Sambos, that we can't be, you know, this knight in shining armor, and, you know, all of these different concepts that we see in school, that, you know, that, as Comrade Huey says in this chapter, that tells us white is right and black is wrong. And
I'm just gonna say this chapter really brought me back to elementary school, where, first of all, I think I've said I'm from Alabama, you know, before, but the town that I grew up in was predominantly a white town. It was a rural town, and the school that I ended up going to was there were maybe in the school of like 400 students, maybe there might have been maybe 10 or 15 black kids there. And it just brought me back to, because I could totally 100% identify with where he talks about going through where you really hate being black, or you think everything that's associated with being black is bad or not good. I think in the first grade I was one of 2 black kids in the whole class, and my first grade teacher was an old, evil, wrinkled bitch, and she separated me and the other black kid from the rest of the class, because she said we were such bad kids that we didn't deserve to be grouped with the rest of the kids. And I really believed I was a bad kid. And I went through kind of a repeated situation in the 3rd grade, where the teacher seems like she got off on humiliating me and other kids that were, for whatever reason, not performing at the way that they should have. Because he talks about in here where he knew how to, it was a word that he knew how to spell, business. And the teacher called him up, and he froze when it came to where he knew how to spell he could write the word, he could spell the word, but the teacher wanted to humiliate him. Just like in Asada, where her teacher wanted to humiliate her, where she was like, were you trying to do this, where she was trying to write an L. And that happened to me. And, you know, so I can totally identify with this, because going through school, like, you don't, as a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year-old child, you don't understand, but you believe when an adult tells you that you're bad, you're bad.
Yeah. And, you know, just, you know, he speaks about, you know, this general feeling that all of us, you know, that is this feeling of, you know, us feeling that we can't learn, that we're not capable of learning. And, you know, we've all seen, you know, we've had those friends, and maybe even participated in getting someone else to do your work, do your homework, do your do whatever for you to get you a passing grade, because of this feeling that is, you know, this whole colonial education system that is supposed to be teaching you, but then at the same time tells you that you are incapable of learning. And to have that, you know, reinforced every time you enter a classroom, every time that you have to, I mean, the dread starts when you wake up in the damn morning to get prepared to go to school, that you have to get up and go and basically be tortured for 8 hours out of a day for like a total of 12 years. That's even if you decide to continue to go to high school and graduate and stuff like that. And in some portions of this chapter, it was just like
reliving.
It was kind of like reliving, and I can speak to it more in chapter 3. But, you know, it forces, I mean, even the formulation, I believe, of aspirations to be the petty bourgeoisie begin as early as elementary school. Because, again, you're forced to think that everything that is associated with being white is right. So, therefore, you're going to try everything within your power to behave like white students, to act like white students. And, you know, we see... You know, we go through this thing where we see children saying, "Why you acting white? Why you talking like that?" And that's because you are acting white. You are talking white, just only because we understand that this is how we have to behave in the world. If we want to achieve anything, the closer we are to whiteness, the more likely we are to succeed. And all of us have had that experience in school of, you know, why the fuck. Why is my experience so different from a white child? Like, why can't I come to school, you know, dressed in clothes, you know, top of the line, all these different types of things like that? It's just that, you know, and white students come to school telling you about these wonderful things they did over the summer, like all of these things they get to experience, and you, this black and colonized child, who doesn't have any access to that, and just having this discussion, just, you know, you can remember just feeling that, you know, growing up and feeling that, and just, you know, understanding the seriousness of that and basing it on our own experience. That is why we have to check in on our children. We have to make a conscious effort to do it. And that is not an easy task, first of all, because you got talking about African and colonized parents who have to work day in and day out. So it's almost as if we put our children off, you know, on the school, like, just go to school. We don't get in trouble. Yeah. Instead of, you know, really sitting our children down, asking them, you know, how did your day go? What did you learn in school today? What did you experience? How does that make you feel? And then reaffirming them, reassuring them, encouraging them, you know, and ultimately being able to politicize them so they are prepared, that they are equipped with the tools to fight against this shit. Because we have children, and I mean, we've gone through this, have to sit through this shit for like 8 hours a day. For 12 years, this is our experience. This is what we've experienced. So this is why we have to be more active in our children's life, and just understanding that we have to have control over our education system. We have to be able to educate our system. I know I'm rambling. I'm sorry, y'all. But let me get to my hashtag read that back part real quick. Please put your hashtag read that back parts in the comments. But mine is... I believe, let me see. I gotta get this book. Okay, it's on page 18, and it starts at, "As I suffered through Sambo and the Black Tar Baby story and Bureau Rabbit in the early grades, a great weight began to settle on me. It was the weight of ignorance and inferiority imposed by the system. I found myself wanting to identify with the white heroes in the primers in the movies I saw, and in time I cringed at the mention of black. This created a gulf of hostility between the teachers and me, a lot of it repressed, but still there, like the strange mixture of hate and admiration we blacks felt towards whites generally."
And just something that you pointed out there, how many, like, superheroes or just good characters that Black kids could identify with. Like every Disney princess was a white hoe. I mean, I'm sorry, but we had nothing to really identify with. And so it starts early on, where it's like, you start to think there's nothing really to look up to being Black, because you don't have any Black like models or cartoon, things that you can really identify with. And even the ones that they did have fit these, like they reading here, like the Sambo story. I mean, it's just, they're killing you before you even have a chance.
You got a hashtag you got, right?
Yeah, mine. Let's see. I have such a. I'm gonna read this one on page. It's on page 20 at the end of the chapter. It says, by then, however, even the 6th grade, I had a tough reputation in school, where there was no need to start fights with the instructors. They were waiting for me and often provoked trouble, thinking I would pull something anyway, even when I was going along with the program. So I know somebody that somebody I'm really close to that happened to, where even if you're just pretty much minding your business and just going to class, like, oh, we heard about you last year, you're not going to do any of that in my classroom. And then there's like, they're trying to poke and prod at you, like they're trying to set the stage for you really to fail. And I mean, that's just an element of the colonial school system. Like our children, like, you have the ones they're doing the best they can do, and they're going to class, they're trying not to get in trouble, trying not to fight. But then you got the ones that's like, okay, I'm gonna defend myself if I'm being picked on, or even if I feel like I have a reason to fight. Then you got teachers, instructors, people that you're supposed to trust, so to speak, and then they're trying to set you up before, because they didn't want your Black ass in their class to begin with, so they gonna make an example out of you. So I just think that's
the greatest thing that I was able to take from this chapter was just the role that African parents have to play in their children's life,
Absolutely.
Until we are able to have our own educational system. Just the rock, like the pillar that we have to be for our children, because, like he says, like Comrade Huey says, like, just the feelings, the weight of ignorance and inferiority imposed by this education system. And that is what your child is facing every single day they walk into a classroom. And I just, I really want us to understand the seriousness of that. Black Power. So let's get to some of these comments real quick. So we have, let's see. We have Comrade Daniel, who says, oh gosh, hold on. I once read a study. Come on, stupid thing.
Well, that's not like there.
Okay. I once read a study which stated that children who were rebellious or had learning gaps have revolutionary potential. Brian and me struggled to get a good education in public school to do the shorthanded curriculums we studied late in high school.
Wow.
Let's see. He says, I'm sorry, y'all. It's my finger in the screen. He says, I was in special education, the slow table classes. Funny enough, that drove me to want to become a revolutionary and writer. I think we all went that wanting to be white experience in school. Comrade Cameron says, I was diagnosed with ADHD after getting kicked out of private school with the white kids when I was 5. Guess they couldn't handle me. Right. We have Comrade Erica, who says, you know what? Growing up, Hold on. Growing up, we had no white students in my elementary school. I think that shaped how I was protected in a sense. We talked about going down south or to the Caribbean blended communities, but most of us went to day camp in the summers. We felt the disparity in the education received because in Catholic school, I saw how religion and the discipline in it was applied was done to force docility. Mm-hmm. So that's when we knew. But I'm coming from the frame of an African child growing up in NYC Bronx in the 80s, 90s. Mm-hmm. We have Comrade Christopher who says the school system is not equipped to teach different learning styles. He also says, hashtag read that back. Robbed me of my sense of my own uniqueness and worth, and in the process, they nearly killed my urge to inquire. Yeah, there you go. And Comrade Erica says he didn't feel self-doubt until he got into the school system. Black power. Dang. Yeah. So, moving on to chapter 3, Comrade Huey, speaks about being Well, first, it's just, because in chapter 2, he speaks about, I just have to comment because first let's review chapter 3 because I feel like chapter 3 speaks more to it. So I'll save those comments for then. But okay, so he talks about being educated outside of school, like most of us do, being educated through our parents, in the streets, like all of just the different jewels that we're fed by our grandparents, uncles, aunts, and all of that other kind of stuff like that. It is like, African and colonized people get a second education outside of school, in a sense. And so he speaks about that, and then also how, black and colonized children, we got to learn how to whip some ass. We have to learn how to whip some ass, and I don't want to say it, as something so simple as that, but he deepens that understanding later on in the chapter. But Huey had a reputation for being a good fighter, growing up in his neighborhood, and how he deepens it is that when you see these children, who are so rebellious and who are just so quick to pop off, at first, you don't have the understanding of what's happening, but he says in this chapter, using fighting as a method to reaffirm your masculinity and your dignity. Right. And those are the things that we as African people are left with. And capitalism forces us to put all of this weight into the possessions that we have, the nice cars, the nice houses, the nice clothes and stuff like that. And being that African and colonized people don't have that, the only thing that can affirm us as human beings is to show how much masculinity I have, to show how much people I can beat up and stuff like that. And on the outside, how the colonial, how colonialism has spun it, that African people are inherently violent, we always angry and stuff like that. But again, we're just trying to hold on to whatever shred of dignity that we have. Mm-hmm. And so he speaks about that in the chapter, and he also talks about how he met his first friend, David Hillard, who was a member of the Black Panther Party. And just saying that we knew Huey P. Newton had a reputation for being a good fighter. David had a reputation of being a good fighter as well too. And he says in this chapter that, fighting was also a means of friendship. Mm-hmm. Because, you a fighter and you this other boy around the block that you hearing all this stuff about being a good fighter, you gonna have to run up on that person and see what's up. And that's how, even growing up, you've seen those types of friendships be birthed through people fighting, and then after that just being like, yo, you my dog and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've had situations, you know, fighting, growing up in a neighborhood, and then just being close to that person, you know, afterwards and stuff like that. And he also speaks about meeting James Crawford, who was another close friend of his, and he, you know, was saying how James used to beat him up,
Yeah.
but he had to come back with some sticks and bats and stuff.
He always came back, though.
Yeah. And he says that, you know, James respected him for that, and you know, he says that they used to fight for a while, but they stopped. And they became close friends once they formed the gang, the Brotherhood, which had 30 to 40 members in it, and it was 7th and 8th graders. That's cool.
Yes,
you know, that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
And then they had Allies, which was another group, but they were a group of 9th graders. I don't think he gives the name of it. I don't remember seeing it, but he said that they formed these gangs to fight off the aggression of white students. Now, we were fed the understanding that gangs were formed, you know, just to go out into the streets, rob, kill, steal, and do all of these things, you know, when that is not the truth. You know, when you immediately think of the Crips and the Bloods, you think of these, you know, these just evil black men,
out of control, just for no reason at all, just wanting to go and wreak havoc on their communities, and just really there's no reason why. They're just inherently violent. And that's what they want you to believe that was bred from.
And as we understand, you know, the Bloods and the Crips were based in Oakland, California. You have Huey P. Newton, you know, who was born in 1942, who was there way before you even had the formation of the Bloods and the Crips, who was basically telling us the formation, like why these gangs were founded, like why. And I believe, you know, even in the early ages of the Bloods and the Crips, they were patrolling the police within the neighborhoods with their guns and things of that nature. But then again, like when you look at the colonial media and, you know, how they put out this narrative that gangs are inherently bad and all of this other type of shit like that, when gangs were created to protect us, to protect African people. So that's the understanding that we need to have.
Right.
And yeah, so he speaks about that, and then he also goes into junior high and saying, you know, how that was just basically a replay of elementary school, and how he went through these series of, you know, being kicked out of class, then being lectured by his parents and the principal, then coming back and then wanting to do the right thing, but then going into class and then just being provoked after, you know, provoked. And, you know, I can remember, this is why I said when I said earlier that, you know, the aspirations of being the petty bourgeoisie are forced into you at a very, very young age. And I say that because Comrade Daniel made the comment that he grew up, you know, in the special education class. I have an older brother, you know, we're 3 years apart, and I was in elementary school while he was in junior middle school or whatever. And I just remember seeing him in those classes and then wondering why he was in those classes. And then I would hear comments from other middle schoolers being like, you know, those are stupid kids, they dumb, they slow, or whatever. And all I can just remember is all of the complications that my older brother brought upon my parents, and just remembering how angry they were always at him, and me internalizing it like, nigga, why don't you just behave? Why don't you just listen to the teacher, do what you have to do? And just me not even wanting to be associated with none of that. So me growing up, you know, making sure that I did my assignments, making sure that I was reading all the time. Like, if my oldest brother and my younger brother want to go out and play football or do whatever, no, I'm staying in the house because I need to read. I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. I need to make sure, basically, that I can impress my white teachers and, you know, be this A student. And I can just remember feeling a separation from my oldest and my youngest brother because they weren't the most well-behaved kids in class. And I can remember just the comments that my mother would make, like, you know, Dia is such a good student, you know, like, he's always doing the right thing, like, why can't you be like Dia? And I reveled in that. I rejoiced in that because it made me feel good. And not understanding the things that my brothers was going through.
Right.
And, you know, just being in class, and you know how you have the teachers who point out the class clowns and all kind of stuff like that. And when they're acting up in class, I'm thinking to myself, like, just shut the fuck up. Like, why you gotta be so ignorant? Why you gotta act like this? Why you gotta do that? And then not understanding then what I was doing, what I was internalizing, you know, versus now, you know, becoming a revolutionary and being involved in political life. But I feel like that it put me in like a type of tunnel vision that I didn't want to be associated with anything bad, that I wanted to, you know, to just be the best that I could be. I didn't want to be like my brothers. I didn't want to be bad. I didn't want to make my parents feel all of this stress. Not understanding what not only my brothers, but what other, you know, young black men and young black women were going through at that time. And even right now, it's still kind of hard for me to articulate because, again, in that instance, I wasn't understanding, you know, the type of lines that I was drawing. Yeah. It was, and then, you know, my oldest brother he used to run away a lot and, you know, going in and out of, like, group homes, being arrested for doing all of these things. And I can remember the anger and the resentment I felt towards him because, again, just all of the stress that I saw that my parents had to go through. And it was just like, why are you doing this? Why are you behaving like this? And for a long time, even up to this point, sometimes it's this type of tension between me and my oldest brother. And I've had past conversations with him, you know, just trying to convey to him that, you know, I understand now. I understand why you were so angry. I understand, like, you know, what was going on. And sometimes I feel like it's still kind of hard for us to bridge that gap. But yeah. So, and I know my experience is not unique. But again, you know, that is what colonialism does to your family. That is what it does. That is what it does to you as a colonized African or indigenous person. And I learned how to fight by fighting my oldest brother. And we would fight like cats and dogs. Like, so much so, one time we was fighting, I think I couldn't have been no more than 13. I pulled a knife on him and we didn't get any Christmas gifts that year. But that's just how serious it was. Yeah, Black Power. I felt like I rambled a lot, but I mean, you know.
That was needed. Yeah.
So I guess we can get into our hashtag read that back parts. And my hashtag read that back was where Comrade Huey says that fighting has always been a big part of my life, as it is in the lives of most poor people. Some find this hard to understand. I was too young to realize that we were really trying to affirm our masculinity and dignity in using force in reaction to the social pressures exerted against us. For a proud and dignified people, fighting was one way to resist dehumanization. You learn a lot about yourself when you fight. Fighting is just not a means of survival. It is also a part of friendship. All the time I was growing up, fighting was an essential aspect of camaraderie. Yeah, camaraderie on the block. It took many forms. You fought your friends or with your friends. You fought with your friends you fought an outside aggressor. If the neighborhood boasted a good fighter, word got around. That's how I first heard of David Hillard. Mm-hmm. But I think I actually read too much. But again, how fighting was used as a way to to humanize us and provide some type of dignity, and just how again Black people, colonized people, those are our only means, through violence that we can make ourselves feel, worthy or deserving.
Right.
So, yeah, Black power.
Yeah, my hashtag read that back was the quote that chapter 3 starts out with. Mm-hmm. It says, he who would be free must strike the first blow. And that's actually a quote by Frederick Douglass.
Excuse me.
From My Bondage and My Freedom. And I chose that because there was a lot of, when I was in school, my mom was the disciplinarian. Mm-hmm. And she didn't want me to get into any type of fight. She wanted me to stay out of trouble. And if I did any of that, of course, I was going to have trouble with her. So I obliged because I didn't want no ass whooping. So, but the other thing is when I was in kindergarten, I had an issue with, I think I was like the only Black kid in that classroom. And I think I was called nigger like the first 5 days I was there. And then one of the little boys that did it, he was, we were during recess, I think he was making like he was shooting me. So what did I do? I kicked him I was going up some stairs and I kicked him in his eye and I got in trouble. And I was like, okay, but he was shooting me, like, but, like, even at that age, like you were saying, like, we're automatically having to go in and defend ourselves. And, they want to attach a violence to that's just the way they are, but no, this is where we're responding to the environment we're forced to live in. And even growing up, once somebody mentioned it or read it, where they had said like kind of like how we become more docile, and because I went through a stage. Erica. Yeah, I went through a stage like where it's like I kind of came in turned up. Mm-hmm. Then I kind of, after I got in trouble and was made to feel like I was a bad kid, and my mom was just like, you just need to behave and stop doing this and stop doing that and everything. It got to the point where I, stopped everything. Like I stopped talking out loud. I was really shy and timid. I was bullied. And it got to the point where I became a doormat. Like I was taking everything. And, but then I got to a point in high school where I was like, you know what, fuck all this shit. And I just started like, it's like I started rebelling again. Mm-hmm. I started purposely like breaking the dress code. Like I don't want to, they said we couldn't wrap our hair up in anything. So I did that literally every day just because I was like, why, and I think I just, that quote resonated with me because it was like, if you want to be free and if you want to achieve your dignity and your liberation and everything that comes along with it, you're going to have to ruffle some feathers. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to shake some shit up that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were living in a world where everything was the way it should be in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so I just, remember that like that last couple of years, I started gravitating towards like there's a awakening that people have. You go through it in adolescence. It's a stage of development where you're struggling with your identity and you're trying to figure some shit out. Mm-hmm. And and when I did that, because before, like, of course, being where I was from, I had a bunch of white friends. And I would, because there really wasn't that many Black kids to be with. But when we went to high school, where all the schools kind of came together and everything, I started to gravitate towards, being black and recognizing there's a difference in people, the way people are treated, and no, I don't want, you just start to question some things, and you start to gravitate towards people that are more like you. And then even when you get in that group of people, then you're starting to wonder, like, well, I just don't understand why things happen like this anyway. I don't know. You just have to, to me, it just means you really do have to be ready to throw the first blow. It's whatever, what do you have left to lose?
Right.
What do we as a people have left to lose?
Right. When you were speaking just now, another thing that came across my mind is also, like, how white teachers can weaponize other black students against other black students.
Yes.
And I say that because in my middle school, they had this program which was called the Gifted and Talented Program. And it was mainly, because I definitely grew up in a rural town, and the majority of my school was black. And it had some white students sprinkled out through there, but here it is, you had this group of students who were in this Gifted and Talented Program, and, basically taunted the other kids who wasn't a part of this, this Gifted and Talented Program. And then I can remember just feeling like, damn, like, what's so special about them? Like, how, what's so special? And then just seeing how, the white teachers would use that to weaponize it against, other black students who weren't partaking in this special Gifted and Talented Program. And I remember clear as day that I was supposed to be placed into the Gifted and Talented Program, but I was acting out in my I was acting out in my second grade class so bad that the white teacher, grabbed me by the sleeve of my shirt and told me, we were going to put you in a Gifted and Talented Program, but we're not going to do that anymore. And I was just like, I was devastated. And I can just remember, immediately calming down, just trying to be like, okay, can you put me in now? Even though I didn't verbally say it to her, but that was just my feelings at the time. And I just remember feeling so down and bad after that, after that incident had happened. But, this is the reality that our children are facing each and every single day. And as parents, not even only as parents, but if you're an older cousin, or uncle, auntie, these are the things that you should be speaking to the children about, Yes. So, all right, we got some hashtag read that backs. We got Comrade Histover who says, we could not read and we did not want the rest of the class to know. The funny thing is that most of the others could not read either. Still, you did not want them to know it. Yes. We have Malachi who says, in school, I always had questions based on what they were teaching. Sometimes they got mad. I don't know why. Because they don't want you messing up the status quo. That's why. We have Comrade Erica who says, one thing the school told my parents, I was smart but rebellious as fuck. I learned early when you get good grades, they'll come for you, but they can't win. But that was a form of compliance too. Yeah, Black Power, yes. Comrade Daniel says, yep, I learned how to fight by fighting older brother as well. We have Comrade Kimya who says, hashtag read that back from chapter 3. For a proud and dignified people, fighting was one way to resist dehumanization. Let's see what else we have here. We have Comrade Histofer who says, I hear you, Nyah. It changed for me when I had a white teacher put Scotch tape on my mouth and my mother had to shut it down. Wow. We have Comrade Cameron who says, if I was ever hyper or out of control, my mom would always ask me if I took my meds.
It's a shame because, unfortunately, what colonialism has done is some of our parents don't know how to be the best advocates for us. And even though I know, and I love my parents, and, I don't look at this as their fault, but I guess it's one way that I learned that, you know, when and if my child goes to a public school, I want to be the best advocate I could be, and not to just take it. And it really doesn't matter. Like, they can have a black teacher, because black teachers are colonized too, and they're going to, you know, spit the same rhetoric as a white teacher will.
And even if, like, even, you know, I guess worse, I say worse for lack of a better term, but, you know, the black teachers are even more willing to, you know, impose these things upon our children.
Absolutely.
Just under the understanding the stake that they have within, you know, the colonial school system.
Absolutely. So it's our parents, sometimes they, you know, they're not aware, like, just, you know, do what you're supposed to do, go to school, don't fight, don't get in trouble, don't worry about what other kids are saying about you, and not realizing that there's a psychological string attached to that. And you're seeing it, unfortunately, in some of our kids who are committing suicide because of the pressures of colonialism that they're facing in school. They would rather just not deal with anything at all. So, you know, we really need to figure this out. This political education is so important because, like I said, a lot of our parents just didn't understand, or just, it still may not understand what a school system, a colonial school system, that the psychological wreck it can put on our children.
And then we so often hear, you know, like, I can remember my oldest brother always saying, my teacher don't like me. And, you know, we hear that, and it's just like, that's just because you're being bad and you acting up in school. But now understanding, you know, the colonial school system, you just understand how much weight that, you know, that phrase actually has.
Yeah.
And if your child is telling you that that my teacher don't like me, as a colonized parent, as an indigenous parent, that is something that you have to check into and really get down to the bottom of. Because, I mean, shit, we've seen viral videos of, you know, black children being arrested, you know, in like a 5-year-old, like a kindergarten, put into handcuffs. An African girl being flipped out of a desk on her head. And so all of this crazy shit that we see our children go through school. You know, just attending school. Like, we just really have to be, you know, more involved in, you know, in our children's school life. And, you know, it's just funny how we can read about Huey P. Newton's experience and then be able to just sit here and have this type of discussion.
Yeah.
You know, that's why political education is just so important. So that concludes chapter 3. So, yeah. So, next Sunday, we're going to be going through chapters 4 through 6. So if you don't have the PDF, again, please hit us up on all of our social media platforms. We can make sure you get it so you can follow along and read along with us. As you can see, this book is already taking a great start. So excited to read about the great Huey P. Newton, and just being able to have these conversations, given this political education. Let's see some more comments real quick. Okay, we have Comrade Erica who says, also, as poor working class, our parents were getting a check, SSISSD, if we were put on meds. Then your child is a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Girl, that is so true.
Erica.
Where was I when it was this parent? This was when I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida. And this sister came, this was when I was managing the radio station. We had a whole series on this thing about this parent, this sister. The school was trying to force her to put her child on medication. I'm talking about this type of situation where the child wouldn't have been able to come back to school if they were not put on this medication. And then, as Comrade Erica says, like, African people, colonized people are struggling so much that they will jeopardize the health of their children by putting them on this medication so they can get this type of check. Not understanding the consequences of what this means for their child. Like, the mom was telling me, once they put your child on this medication, your child then has a track sheet that is going to follow them for the rest of their lives. When being considered for employment or any other type of thing like that, they're always going to have that with them.
Disabilities there. Yep.
And you're talking about children from ages, like 2 to 3 to 5 years old. They're forcing them on this medication, and we don't understand what that is doing to our children.
Yeah.
When a child is just being a child, behaving like a child. And white power is able to come in and tell us that our child has ADHD or all this other type of bullshit that they created, when our child is just being a child.
Yes.
We can't fall. That's the trap that we cannot fall into. Thank you for bringing that up, Erica. I didn't even think about that. We have Comrade Christopher, who says, revolutionary suicide is a strong desire to live with hope and human dignity, that existence without them is impossible. When reactionary forces crush us, I believe he must have been replying to somebody. So, yes, Erica, and everybody else, chapters 4 through 6, what we're reviewing next Sunday. And Comrade Nyah, who is Chief of Membership, got something she want to tell y'all. So take it over.
So y'all participated in this wonderful book club summer we had today over this wonderful piece that we're reading. And we need bodies in this organization to make this work continue to happen. So we are a revolutionary organization that that is about action, feet on the ground, and we are asking you to join. So if you put a fist in the comments, I will contact you myself to show you how to join. But you can go to www.blackhammer.org and select join. If you want to become a member of Black Hammer today, you can do so as low as $5 a month, because we know everybody is on a budget. And we will contact you and we'll let you know how to get involved. We have our calls that you can get on so that you can hear of all the great work that we're doing. But today, if you want to be contacted, just drop a fist in the comment section and I will hit you up myself and I will let you know exactly what to do to sign up. So yes, drop those fists. I'm going to contact you and I'm going to let you know exactly what you need to do. But you can go to the website right now, select join, and the membership committee, myself, my comrades, we will contact you and we'll get you on the right track. So yeah, let me see them fists.
Black power. Also, y'all, don't forget, donate today, support Black Hammer, blackhammer.org, become a member, as Comrade Nyah just said. You can even if you can't become a full-fledged member, you can support the organization on a monthly basis, as Comrade Nyah says, as low as $5 a month. If you white, hell no, you cannot join Black Hammer, but you can pay reparations to support the organization on a monthly basis. You can support the organization by paying reparations.
Somebody angry about that.
And that is fine. And that is that is fine. That is fine. We have no problem with that.
Well, yeah.
I also want to remind y'all to support the Kucheza Moto fundraiser, Dancing in the Flames of Revolution. We're trying to launch this next month in September, before I think summer ends technically September 23rd, so we're still gonna release it in the summer. But go to GoFundMe.com/Kuchezamoto. That's KUCHEZAMOTO, and all of the links are pinned right here in the comments. And yeah, so remember, next week, chapters 4 through 6. Revolutionary Suicide. We got you with the free PDF, so make sure you hit us up so we can go ahead and, just do the damn thing. Black power.
Black power, y'all.